Do you have a Talaria Sting? Do you have the new E-Ride Pro SS? Maybe you have a very muddy Sur-Ron with no battery in it. Or a red Talaria XXX with blue wheels. Maybe you have a larger bike like the Sur-Ron Ultra B. All these models provide amazing performance out of the box and are a ton of fun to ride. However, have you ever thought, I just want a little bit more power and performance out of my bike? Today, we're gonna go over everything you need to know about making that happen for your E-Moto. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new to our channel, thank you for joining today. We're the Talaria boys. We've been upgrading, modifying all these small, lightweight E-Motos on our YouTube channel for some time now. Today, we're tackling a big topic, and that is adding more power to your bike or an upgraded controller. So the topics we're gonna cover today are, should you buy an upgraded controller? What does it do? And then which upgraded controller is gonna be best for you? Because we've tried nearly every option on the market and we've narrowed it down to our top 3 pick. And it's critical for you guys to watch this video and learn, because a lot of it is going to be personal preference and what kind of riding you're doing. And that's gonna help you determine which controller is best for you. So with that, let's talk about what a controller is and what it does for your E-Moto. All right, guys, I am interrupting myself to announce that we now sell the new E-Ride Pro SS 2.0 model, just like you see right here. It's the best performing bike in its class. We're excited to be able to offer it. We do have them in stock, ready to ship right away to anywhere in the lower 48 states. We'll also be selling a bunch more E-Moto models in the near future. Talaria Sting, Sur-Ron Light B, Sur-Ron Ultra B, and more. So you guys can watch the videos, decide which bike model is gonna be best for you. You guys can purchase it and then get our upgraded parts at a discount as well. If you guys are interested in this, check the link in the video description to head on over to our E-Moto store. Thanks for watching, back to the video. So your E-Moto has 3 critical electric power components to power the bike. You have your controller, typically right here on the front. You have your motor, it's always gonna be down here on the bottom. And you have a battery. Now this does vary from bike to bike. In this case, our battery is right here in this sleeve. So the controller is essentially the brain of the whole operation. When you as the rider twist the throttle, your controller pulls power from the battery, sends it to the motor, gets your bike moving. It also connects to your display, it powers your headlight. Basically any electronic system on the bike runs through this as the brain of the operation. So what happens when you upgrade this component? That's where you can see tons of changes to your bike. The biggest differences you're gonna notice are increased performance, power numbers from the bike essentially, a lot of increased customization, such as building more power modes that you can switch to. Normally on a stock bike, you only have like a sport mode and an eco mode. With most of these upgraded controllers, you can do a lot more power modes. You can even adjust your throttle sensitivity, basically make the bike feel however you would like it to feel, which is super nice to have that customization. Typically you get an app or a nice display that can change all those peripheral settings for you. So now that everybody knows what happens when you upgrade your controller, let's talk about the order of upgrade operations essentially on these bikes, because you can upgrade your controller on any of the stock bikes and you can leave the stock battery in and leave the stock motor in. By upgrading your controller, you are gonna see an increase in performance even though you're leaving these 2 components. That increase will vary based on the model of bike you have. Like an E-Ride Pro, for instance, actually gets a bigger increase in performance than say a Sur-Ron or Talaria does when you add a controller. All 3 you will see an improvement in performance, but let's talk about what's the next step. What if you want more power than even just upgrading a controller? The next step is gonna be to upgrade your battery. This is gonna be the next limiting factor on your bike. Once you upgrade the battery, you'll be able to turn up your power actually pretty significantly, even while keeping the stock motor on your bike, which is pretty nice. You can upgrade this first, you get an increase in power, then you do your battery, you get another good increase in power and typically more range, so you can ride further. Then if you wanna go all out crazy, you upgrade your motor last, and that's where you're gonna see another huge increase in performance. Although just doing a controller and a battery on most bikes is gonna double or triple the performance. So they're already going to be super fast. Later in the video, we're going to go over what performance and power increases you're gonna get by adding a controller to all the stock bikes that are for sale on the market right now. And I just want to reemphasize, we do see a lot of people that upgrade their controller, want to upgrade their motor next before the battery. The reason people want to do this is because really it makes sense. You think that the motor is what is powering your bike and sending the power to the rear wheel, which is true. and an upgraded motor costs less than an upgraded battery. So people think that, that makes the most sense to upgrade in order, but really you're not going to get any increase in performance because that's not the limiting factor of your bike. The battery is. Your new controller will have tons of power, but you're just adding a more capable motor that you didn't actually need. So really, upgrade your controller, then your battery, then your motor. If this video is being helpful to you and you're enjoying it, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out our channel. And once again, a reminder, if you guys are interested in purchasing any of the controllers that we talk about today, check the links in the video description for a good, safe place to purchase. Now let's introduce our favorite controllers that we're going to go more in depth on in this video. Coming in at $1,195, we have the EBMX X9000 controller. This controller is capable of 35 kilowatts of peak power. It's capable of 1,000 phase amps. It is compatible with almost all of the major E-Motos on the market, including Sur-Ron Lite BX, Talaria Sting, Talaria XXX, E-Ride Pro SS that we have here, and Sur-Ron Ultra B. This bike comes with a thumb regen brake, comes with an upgraded display, it comes with all the mounting hardware to put it on all of those bikes. It is an absolute powerhouse of a controller, and it has the most compatibility with bikes, with upgraded motors and upgraded batteries of any controller on this list. Next on our list, coming in at $935, we have the Nucular P24F. This controller is capable of 25 kilowatts peak power, 500 phase amps, also can be spec'd with a thumb regen brake lever, comes with a large display that has tons of functionality built into it. Right now, this controller is compatible with the Sur-Ron Lite BX, Talaria Sting MX3, Talaria Sting R, and the Talaria XXX like you see right here. This controller is the least expensive on our list, and we've heard in the future they are coming out with a more powerful, higher torque, higher phase amp controller in the future. Next up, we have two controllers from Torp, the TC1000 and the TC500. TC1000 comes in at $1,285. TC500 is a lower power option, comes in at $1,050. One thing that's cool about these two controllers is they do come pretty basic. You can actually use them with the stock display on your bike. They are compatible with the Sur-Ron Lite BX and the Talaria Sting MX3 and Talaria MX4. And then the TC1000, the more powerful option, is compatible with the Sur-Ron Ultra B. If you would like to spec these controllers with an upgraded regen brake like the other two we've talked about, or an upgraded display with added functionality, that costs about $250 to add on to either of the previous standard prices we just mentioned. As you can see, I don't have the controller right here. It's not on a bike. We've owned both a TC500 and a TC1000 though in person on our personal bikes. I just don't have one right here to show you in the video. The TC500 is rated at 25 kilowatts peak power, 500 phase amps, and the TC1000 is rated at a whopping 50 kilowatts and 1,000 phase amps. Apart from the power ratings, both these controllers are essentially the same. They have the same install process, the same app functionality. They work with the same upgraded display that you can option, the same regen brake. Basically, they just have different limits for when you're upgrading your bike. TC1000 is going to be better for someone who wants to go all the way up the upgrade process. TC500 is a little bit more basic, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Now that you guys know the four main controllers that we like and recommend, let's talk about the ones we left out of this video on purpose. First one being BAC 4000 and 8000 controllers. These are outdated. They weren't specifically made for E-Motos. They're made for like agricultural and like farming like situations. And while they do work fairly well for the E-Motos, all of these four controllers that we just listed are way better in our opinions. They have way easier app, way better customer support. A lot of people have had waterproofing issues with the BACs because even washing your bike, people are getting water inside those controllers, where we haven't seen those issues with the ones we recommended. Another controller we left out of this is a new Ventus controller. This is a new one. We actually have a prototype that we've been riding. We've been very impressed with the controller, just haven't had enough time on it, and since ours is a prototype, the real one is not officially released yet. We left it out of the video for now. We'll be doing a follow-up video to that at some point. We also left out KO controllers. There is 3 KO models, 3 main ones. A lot of people run this controller and are very happy with it. I owned one when it first came out, the KO Nano. I got that for my Talaria Sting. I didn't hate it by any means, but once I upgraded to the EBMX X9000, and now that I've tried the Nucular and the Torp options, I would highly recommend them over any of the KOs. KO has also kind of gone downhill as a company recently. Their customer support is basically non-existent at this point, where the controllers we recommend all have amazing customer support. And it's one of the biggest, most important things with these E-Motos is, you know, there's electronics. Stuff can go wrong. There are issues. I'm not saying these controllers are perfect, but good customer support from a company that is on top of it is critical when buying these. Okay, now that we've talked about all the on-paper specs of the 4 controllers we recommend, let's get into the real world here and actually talk about what it's like to own and live with these controllers, what it's like to ride them thousands of miles like we've done, what it's like to install them, disinstall them, install them on other models, and like really try. We've really spent a lot of time going over and testing these controllers so we can give you guys an informed decision and help you know what's going to be best for you. Now we need to go back into our order of upgrade operations and talk about what performance increase you're going to see by slapping a controller on your specific bike model. We're going to start with the Sur-On Lite BX. Now this bike does come with a couple different battery variations. You've got your 60 volt 40 amp hour, and then there's a few that are a little bit smaller than that. Depending on what battery model you have, you can see an increase from the standard 6 kilowatts up to about 8, being your absolute max with the most capable battery that the Lite BX comes with. If you are upgrading a Talaria Sting MX3, that bike also starts with 6 kilowatts as stock. We've seen an increase up to about 7.5 kilowatts, so a similar increase to a stock Sur-On. Now, if we move on to the Talaria Sting R or the MX4, that is where we're going to see a bigger increase in performance. That bike starts at 8 kilowatts when it is stock. If you add any one of these controllers, you can increase that to about 11 kilowatts. So that's the biggest increase we've seen so far of the bikes we've talked about. The Talaria XXX Luna Cycle Edition starts at 6.5 kilowatts of power. We've tried 2 upgraded controllers on it, the EBMX X9000 and the Nucular P24F, and both those controllers did not really give us an increase in performance because the stock controller was already maxing out the stock battery. What we did get is all the customization that you get that we talked about when you add in an upgraded controller. The Sur-On Ultra B is compatible with the TC500 controller from Torp and the EBMX X9000 controller. That bike is 12.5 kilowatt stock, and you will see an increase up to 16.5 to 17 kilowatt range. So that is also a very good increase in power. Our last bike we'll mention is this E-Ride Pro SS. This bike is rated at 12 kilowatt stock, although we really feel like it is not actually 12, might be somewhere in the realm of 10.5 to 11 kilowatts. When you add an upgraded controller to this bike, you are seeing a true 15 kilowatts. So that is, again, an even bigger jump than the Talaria Sting R made by adding a controller. Now I should mention one more thing. The E-Ride Pro only allows one of these controllers to work with it at the moment. That is the EBMX X9000. The other 3 bikes we mentioned, you can run any one of the 4 controllers we've been talking about on those bikes to see those same improvements in performance. Hopefully you guys are catching on that it doesn't necessarily matter at this stage of the upgrades which controller you pick, because your limiting factor is your battery. So with your stock battery, any one of these controllers is going to increase your performance but be limited by the battery. With that being said, what separates these controllers is going to be how easy they are to install, that app support, how the throttle actually feels, and that's what we're going to get into now. Then at the very end of the video, we're going to talk about the next separation in controllers, which is what happens when you upgrade your battery and your motor and actually try to reach the limits of some of these controllers. Guys, I had to sit down. The video, to be honest, is wearing me out. Sometimes it's like really difficult and tiring to try to be so critical about these different components that we talk about in these videos, because at the end of the day, it's sort of our job as like YouTubers and reviewing these to be ultra critical and try to figure out all the issues and try to really narrow down what product's going to be better for somebody. But it's tiring because most of these products are amazing and the majority of people aren't necessarily going to have any issues with that one. There might just be one that's just a slightly better for them. So with that, we're going to try to continue to be real here and talk about what our preferences are for each of these controllers, because we do recommend some over others depending on what bike you have and depending on your skill level as a rider. So let's talk about installing these controllers. Now we all agree, me and Reed and Alex, that's who I'm talking about when I say we, is us, the Talaria boys that have spent all this time riding these bikes and installing them. The Torp is by far the easiest. TC1000 and 500 both included in this. They are the smallest controller, the least amount of bolts to put in, smallest amount of wiring to try to tuck in the tight frame. And because they don't come with an upgraded display or a regen throttle, there's actually nothing for you to run up to your handlebar, which is a good and a bad thing because at the end of the day, I'd rather have those peripherals than not. So that's just something to keep in mind, but it is by far the easiest to install. And then they do come with a nice app that you can do all the setup and select all your power levels in a very simple, easy laid out process. Next up is going to be the EBMX X9000. This is going to be a little bit more difficult of an install. It is not very hard by any means, and we do have install videos showing you how to do this for all of these controller options. This one just has more wiring and it's a physically larger controller, so it just gets more difficult, like tucking all the wires in and making everything fit. I promise you it does fit, so it's totally possible. It's just a little bit more difficult than the Torp. You do need to run your cables for your display up and for your regen throttle. Next up, we have the Nucular. This one's a little bit more difficult, again, than the X9000. I would say it's a very similar install process of the actual controller, but instead of using an app to set it up like the Torp and the EBMX, you actually set up all your peripherals, all your power modes, all your motor tunes inside the large display. A lot of people like that you can do all that setup on the display and it's just always there with your bike connected to it, which is nice. But it is a lot more difficult to set up and get all your parameters perfectly set in because there's not an app that like perfectly lays out the steps in order to do that. So that's our order. Torp's easiest, EBMX is second place, not too far behind. Nucular is third place, not too far behind that. Now let's talk about throttle feel and customization. All three of these controllers have not unlimited customization, but tons of different throttle modes and you can change it exactly to where you want it. That being said, this is a totally personal preference category and it really is hard for us to like say one is definitively better than the other because at the end of the day, when you pair each of these controllers with different bike models and different motor and battery combinations, they feel different than each other. And so it's hard to kind of pin down, but at the end of the day, all three of these controllers do have a ton of customization to where you should be able to get it to feel the way you want it to feel. Now let's talk about what happens when you start upgrading your battery and your motor and how that fits in with compatibility for each of these controllers. I'm going to jump right in and say that the EBMX X9000 controller is absolutely the most compatible when it comes to trying and upgrading to any battery you can think of and any upgraded motor you can think of. They have a huge selection built into the app where you can, if you install a different motor on your bike, you can go in and just select that you switch to that motor and the app will auto-calibrate it and set it up. This controller has a huge list of compatible options and it works on every bike we talked about today. The Nucular P24F is compatible with the Talaria Sting R, Talaria Sting MX3, the Talaria XXX, and the Sur-On Light B. So basically it's not compatible with the Sur-On Ultra B or the E-Ride Pro, both of which we've talked about today. That controller has been compatible with every configuration we've thrown at it. All the batteries we've tried, all the upgraded motors we've tried, and it's been a very good controller. It does not have like specific selections that you can do inside the display, and it doesn't have an app like we mentioned. So you actually just run a motor calibration and it learns and reads the motor like the other controllers do, but it's had a great success rate with correctly calibrating all the motors and having them run really smooth. So we're very impressed with the Nucular there. The Torp controllers are more limited. They're a little more locked down than the other two when it comes to upgraded motor and battery options. They have a much shorter list of selections within the app, and we have had a few more compatibility issues with the Torp to where if you're someone that plans to do a ton of power upgrades and modifications in the future, we just don't recommend Torp as much. We had an issue the other day where we couldn't run our EBMX upgraded 72 volt battery with our Torp TC500. There's some sort of issue going on, and Torp said they actually didn't test running that battery with that controller yet. EBMX being one of the most popular upgraded batteries you can get, this was surprising to us. So just keep that in mind as far as compatibility goes. EBMX is by far the most compatible. Nucular doesn't say they're compatible with everything, but we have had very good success calibrating motors, getting stuff to run perfectly. And Torp, while it does run very well for the stuff that they have built into the app, it's a much smaller selection and not as much variety. I'm going to lay out some scenarios and give my opinion on what controller I would pick for each of them. Now, if I was doing a fully modified, upgraded, built bike, I'm talking upgraded controller, upgraded motor, upgraded battery, lots of money put into this build trying to run huge amounts of power. Every day of the week, I would pick an EBMX X9000 controller. It's rated at crazy high power numbers, has all the compatibility I would need to select those other components, and it stays really cool while doing it, has a really nice app functionality, beast of a controller. Now, if I was doing a more of a budget performance build, I would look at the Nucular P24F. It is by far the least expensive controller on our list by a good margin. And that controller is still capable of 25 kilowatts peak power, 500 phase amps, and has a lot of compatibility with a lot of different bikes. So for that, if you're balling on a budget, that Nucular is going to be super impressive for you. It's really a fantastic controller and has good customer support. Now, if we continue on our theme of Nucular P24F, I also think this is a fantastic controller for a bike that is almost stock. So this controller, when you're running it with a stock battery and motor, feels excellent. In my opinion, I actually think it feels the smoothest in the throttle department for a stock bike, a bike that's running low amounts of power. I think like the X9000 feels better the more power you put into it and the higher you run. So it's kind of confusing to talk about, but I think the Nucular feels fantastic when you run it on low power and when you run it on high power. Okay, let's go back to what if I have a stock bike that has a stock battery and a stock motor. I think both the TC500 from Torp and the Nucular are great controller options. They do have the varying differences that we've talked about in this video. The Torp has a good app. The Nucular has a great display. Both have a ton of customization. Where they differ a little bit is the Torp is going to be easier to install, so that's one benefit, but it's also a little bit more expensive. So this is where you guys can just weigh what things are more important to you or less important to you, but I think at the end of the day, both of these controllers are going to be excellent for a bike that you're leaving mostly stock in the power department and just want that increase that the controller will give you. My last opinion I want to add is that I wouldn't purchase the Torp TC500 controller. I think the 500 has its place. It's great for the stock motor and battery, and you can still run an upgraded battery and motor with it and get some good performance increases. But the TC1000 is way too expensive in my opinion, and you can get the same super upper echelon top tier performance out of an EBMX X9000 for less money. It has more customization, more compatibility, and in my opinion, all around a better controller. Well guys, if you made it this far in the video, thank you. I know it was a long one, a lot to talk about, not necessarily the most exciting stuff, but thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions about these controllers or if you're interested in purchasing one, check the link in our description. We'll have great places for you to buy them, and email us at support@tbelectricmoto.com and we'll answer any questions or leave a comment on the video. And I think it's time to announce another cash giveaway in one of our orders from our online parts store. So we're gonna throw in $50 cash to one of the next 50 orders placed after this video is posted. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed. We'll catch you next video. See ya.